I would not be sitting here today if my industry had had that heavy hand of legislation. I find that in Nigeria, it tends to really slow down innovation and slow down progress. And also, it tends to be interpreted in the way that benefits the most powerful people in the room. So I can imagine a bunch of senators coming up with this. Number one, if you look at what happened in the States when Mark Zuckerberg was in front of the Senate committee, most of them were clueless. They didn't really understand. It was like a joke online because most of them really didn't understand what it was about. So I can imagine that same conversation happening on the floor of the Senate here. Same results. So I'm going to expect, you know, the composition of our legislature here. I can imagine like a bunch of men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s coming up with legislation around technology built by people in their 20s, 30s. I'm very reluctant. I think it's going to end up punishing people locally. I think it's going to hamper freedom of expression and freedom of the press. And I feel it's going to be used as a tool to really stifle innovation and expression.
Professor, do you agree? Please, Professor, on that side of the, he's still quite technology savvy at over 80. Prof, do you agree, sir, that legislation will be high-handed?
If I may diverge a bit, because there's a point which I don't want to lose, especially as I might feel, we'll come back to that later, but I don't want to lose this point, especially as I may have triggered it off, as in the VP's speech about the freedom of speech and the importance of not losing sight of that cardinal principle of existence, of social existence. And also, I haven't insisted that this is something to be treated criminally. I don't want the combination of that to become an opportunity for our very bloodthirsty legislators to push the kind of law which they tried to enact the other time, in which they were decreeing capital punishment for any, for speech, hate speech. I don't know how far it's gone yet, whether they've dropped it or whether it's on the president's table, but nothing I've said today should be taken as endorsement of that lunacy. If people are bloodthirsty, they should go and join Boko Haram, instead of using the legislative chambers to initiate another opportunity for slaughtering people for speaking their minds, like Khashoggi. So let's be very, very careful about that. Now, please, we can return to the other.
Yes, well, you've already answered the question, actually. You're not for any legislation.
Sorry?
You don't think legislation will do the trick to check fake news?
To turn the...
Would legislation do anything? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, legislation is very important. In fact, we have sufficient legislation to deal with those who purvey false news. There are laws of libel, laws of slander, and there's a crime called identity theft. When you create a website for the purpose of disseminating fake news, that's in the name of somebody else, that's identity theft, and that should be treated exactly that way. So all we need to do is tell the law enforcement agencies and the Attorney General, the prosecutors, to treat this particular crime a little bit more seriously, to understand that it undermines society, undermines stability, and just confuses knowledge, it debases knowledge. Not only that, it distorts the mentality of the younger generation, vulnerable generation. Let me tell you why. There was a time, please remember, when some would-be writers actually did not know it was a crime to republish somebody's work and put their names on it. You may find that difficult to believe, but there were actually people who've been to school, educated, who actually felt it was all right as long as you paid for the book yourself. You can take somebody else's work and put your name on it. I spoke to them. They actually did not believe it was a crime. And so you can now create a new generation who believe that it's perfectly all right to fake news as long as you do it yourself that it's, in fact, a noble thing to doctor news, or to, in fact, to start ab initio and just throw something like throwing a stone into a pool and watch the ripples. There are individuals who have been brought up in that way as a result of this internet.